Hey, all right. So we look like we are live. I'm going to just check everything's working on my phone, Morley. So if you would do us the honor of welcoming everybody, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever part of the world you're in. Another scintillating 30 minutes of chat about all things RCP, and looking forward to sharing some material that, or at least sharing the construct of our webinar that's going to be in about 24 hours, maybe 22 hours, whatever it is, and answering any questions if we have time at the end. And thank you all for being here. And if Frank's there, hi Frank. But he's missed the last couple, so I might need to have to let that go. So we'll see where we are.
All right. I have got the live open here. So if you are here live, please do say hello. Christiane is, as always, ever present. We've got quite a number of people. Hello, Delane. Welcome, everybody. I am looking down because I've got the live version here so I can keep up with you guys in the comments, because of course when we're live from Zoom into Facebook they don't translate across, so that's kind of my behind the scenes bits and pieces that I do. Morley's the talent, he's got all the information.
Right. Yeah, I'm just the pretty face, right? I don't know how you and Christiane do it. You guys are keeping track of the conversation and the chatter on that would drive me crazy. I'm trying to keep focused here. So yeah, I appreciate all you do.
And that's what the benefit is of having different people with different skill set. And, you know, you've got so much knowledge that I don't have. So, you know, I think we balance one another out really well, whether it's you swap Christiane out for me. She's obviously got a lot more understanding of the RCP than I do. But what I want to do today is we've got a webinar. So for those of you who aren't familiar, perhaps you're new or you just haven't heard us talking about these before, we've got a webinar coming up tomorrow. So it's just shy of 24 hours from now. And the RCP as a whole do a free webinar every month. Every month it's it's kind of like an offering and a gift to the community, and it's on a topic that we deem to be quite pertinent. We often work through the protocol and any other topics of interest that Morley stumbles across. And this webinar coming up tomorrow is on the stress connection. We're going to get Morley in a moment to kind of unpack that for us, give us a little taste test and share a little bit about that. And then we'll do a little book update and we'll do all of that sort of stuff that we always tackle. And then at the end, if we've got any questions about the stress connection, then we can squeeze in a question or two at the end if time permits. But as you can see, Morley, well, I know that Morley seems to be in a familiar environment once again. So you're no longer on the road, Morley, is that right?
No, we're back home, thank God.
Back home and settled.
Yeah, we'll be here for a couple of weeks and then back on the road again.
Yes, you definitely do travel more than most people I know.
Well, we're able to travel, so we're trying to take advantage of that. So it's good. Yeah.
It's definitely been something really difficult for those of us in Australia to do in more recent times, but things are looking up. So we've got Lyndall saying good morning. We've got Christina saying hello. And we've got Lyndall also saying, love the webinars and always learn something new. Thank you. That's really lovely.
That's great.
Amazing. All right. So what we'll do is we'll dive straight into the stress connection. Tell us, Morley, if there is anyone listening here who has no idea about maybe the RCP, maybe that a friend has told them about the RCP and they're brand new, what on earth are we talking about when we say the stress connection? If you could boil it all down really simply and draw some beautiful connections for those folks who perhaps aren't familiar with this concept or this protocol, how would you do that?
Very simply. We have one requirement on this planet, and that's to make energy. It's really all we do. We make energy all day long. And we also live on a planet that has a lot of stress. It's the way the game plan works. It's like kind of this video game of life has a lot of stress in it. We all know that. And we're designed for acute stress. We're not designed for chronic stress. And that's what's happened in the modern era. Last 100 years, we've gone from a species of responding to acute stress to having to endure chronic stress. And the best definition I've ever seen about stress and energy is by Mark Hyman. And stress is the body's inability for the body to make energy for the mind to respond to its environment. And that ties it all together. It's a really brilliant observation on his part. And it's important for people to realize that when we have stress in our world, we have threats to our ability to make energy. So the way I characterize it is, if you have stress in your world, you're going to have oxidative stress in your body. And we always have oxidative stress. We live on a planet with oxygen. It's not candy. It's a very toxic substance. It's 20% of the air we breathe, 20.9 for you purists. And it needs to be turned into water in order to allow energy to flow properly. And it's really, really, when you get into the weeds of it, it's really simple and elegant, but it's easily disrupted because of their stress response. And that's really what the webinar is about, is to give people the sense of there are 1,000 different kinds of stressors in our lives. The broad categories are physical stress, environmental stress, emotional stress, and metabolic stress. Those are the 4 broad classifications. But there are thousands of different examples of each in terms of how they can express, but there's only one stress response. It's absolutely amazing. It doesn't matter what form it takes outside of our body or potentially inside our body. There's only one way the body responds to it, and that's through mineral loss. So the body's designed to like, whoa, we got some stress and let's deal with it. And it's absolutely amazing that there is this singular response to all these different forms of stress. And it doesn't involve thousands of minerals. It only involves a few. I mean, a really critical few. And so it's good to know that. And what the RCP is really designed to do, as I think you all are learning, is teaching people how to make energy, how to optimize energy, and deal with that in a very constructive way so that you get the full benefit of that. And so the focus of the webinar is going to be to walk through the different components of it and what are some broad strokes. And what happens when we are under stress is what typically happens is we go into a state of fear. We may be really sophisticated about it and think we're being very cool, but inside there is a threat. And there is such a thing as cellular fear, that the body realizes that there is a constraint on its ability to make energy. Well, that is a fearful event for the body because it wants to make energy. And so this is just something that we really put a lot of stock into, put a lot of attention on, that is not handled or addressed, at least to my satisfaction, in the conventional world or even the functional world, if I can call it that. So it's just a different focus and trying to help people to realize that these are manageable events. And what I kind of came to realize this morning is that the 2 most important minerals, of course, for the stress response is magnesium and copper. And magnesium, I think it helps you to discern how big a threat is this. If you're magnesium deficient, a hangnail is a stressor. If you've got enough magnesium, facing a bear could be an untoward event, but you're not going to freak out about it. You're going to keep your cool. And that's why some doctors call it the chill pill. Magnesium is Mother Nature's chill pill. And it's not that we want to ignore the bear, but we don't need to freak out about the bear. And so when we are relaxed about the bear, then there's not as much pressure on the body to respond to that fearful event. And it can modulate the energy production accordingly. And that's really what we're seeking to do, is have a chance or have an understanding of how do we respond to these constant threats that we're going to have in our lives and put them into perspective and put them into the context of our physiology. So that's really what we're going to talk about with pretty pictures and citing different articles and things like that. I think people will find helpful, and it'll just give people another way of thinking about their day-to-day lives. So,
and you've given me a beautiful, sorry, Molly, you go.
Go ahead. That's all right. I'm done.
What you were going to say, what you did say, and has kind of given me a beautiful little segue there, because I was hoping that we could engage the audience who are here live with us today on this subject and on this topic of the stress connection. Christine, if you could support me with this, if you could pop into the chat the 4 types of stress. Morley, if you could please tell us once again the 4 types of stress. What I'm going to get the folks who are listening live to do is to do a little self-assessment. Which of these do you think is, the primary focus for you personally right here, right now? Like, what is it that you need to work on the most? It may be a little bit of a trick question, but which one do you self-identify as the most important stressor for you to kind of address at the moment? So Morley, once again, if you don't mind, those 4 stresses again, and just a little quick summary of each of those.
Sure. Physical. Was I in a car accident? Did I fall down a flight of stairs? Those are physical stressors that have an immediate reaction by the body.
Yeah.
There's environmental stress. Do I live in a toxic environment? Is there mold? Are there too many EMFs? Are there Wi-Fi towers, outside my bedroom? Do I have a lousy diet? That's an environmental stressor. Do I have an incredibly stressful job? That's an environmental stressor. Do I drink lousy water? Things like that. Emotional stress. Am I in a toxic relationship? Do I have history of events that are very traumatic to me that I can't let go? Things of that nature. So those are emotional stressors. And then the metabolic stressors really are an expression of metabolic dysfunction that's usually caused by mineral deficiencies. But is my metabolism able to make energy, or do I struggle to make energy? Well, that's the metabolic side of stress. Am I able to efficiently make the energy that I need to get through my day?
Absolutely. And without having the testing done, Morley, what are some telltale signs that metabolic stress is real for us?
There are 5 that we typically talk about. One is, did I get a good night's sleep? Did I wake up refreshed? Do I have an appetite? Am I able to eliminate my waste? Do I have enough energy to get me through the day? And is my mood consistent with my situation? If someone in my family just died, I should be depressed. If I just won the lottery, I should be excited. So sometimes that's not the case. So those are we call them the 5 habits of daily living. And it's very easy to monitor. If you keep waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, your sleep cycle is disrupted, but it's telling us that your liver is not happy. If you don't have an appetite, there's a problem right there, because we're supposed to need food in order to make energy. So just those are some obvious ways that you can assess throughout the day, how am I doing?
Yeah, thank you for that, Morley. So for those of you who are here live, and of course, anyone who's listening back a little later in the replay, you're absolutely welcome to add your comments. Out of those 4 types of stresses, the physical, environmental, emotional, and metabolic, which of those are you perhaps acutely aware of that need some adjustment, or do a little self-assessment? And if you'd like to share that with us, we'd love to hear that, because these insights about ourselves is what can start to elicit change. And we've also got some sharing that happened a little earlier up in the comments, which was from, I just need to scroll one moment. Cheryl was saying, I need to get a hold on my stress and learn to deal with it better. And I think
everybody else.
right. And I think that, with those 4 types, those categories that you've shared with us, Morley, and then beneath that, the sleep, the appetite, whether we're processing our waste, our energy, and our mood, it gives us some really good structure to self-assess, to look at where we're at. And of course, if we do recognize that there are some opportunities for improvement, let's say, the easiest way to rectify that is to implement the root cause protocol, right? That's kind of how this all came about.
Right. That's the foundational focus, to get the body back to its basics, get it back to factory settings. That's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cheryl has shared, oh crap, I strike out on all of them to an extent, really need to get into ways to reduce stress. Delana said physical and metabolic. And Christiane has also shared those 5 habits of daily living. Yeah, absolutely. Worrying about stress causes stress. Haha.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I once had a chance to talk to Dr. Liz's uncle, who just recently passed away at the tender age of 95. Just an amazing guy. He was a very gifted portrait artist. Certainly, he was very talented. And I remember asking him, his name was Glenn. So I said, Uncle Glenn, I'm curious, how do you deal with stress? And he looked at me with this puzzled expression on his face. He said, well, Morley, I don't have any stress. I said, what? He said, whenever I'm confronted with a problem, I figure out how to solve it, and then the stress goes away. And I thought that what a brilliant and beautiful way to approach life. I've never encountered that kind of ease before, but he's absolutely right. When we get all tied up in knots, it's because we haven't figured out what's the problem and how can I solve it. So there's some real wisdom to be had from his very simplistic approach to life.
Yeah, with age comes wisdom, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it was a striking conversation that left me, I was just like breathless, like, wow, he's right. We just have to solve the problems.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So simple, yet just so beautiful and balanced, and what we could all benefit from, even just a smidge more of that in our everyday lives.
Right.
Yeah.
And when people who are drawn to this work are high IQ, so everyone on the call right now has passed the IQ test, you can relax. And when does stress begin for people with high IQ? When they feel out of control. So what does stress do? It takes us out of our control state. We are suddenly thrown into this very uncomfortable space. And that's what Uncle Glenn was trying to say, is you got to figure out what's causing you to get out of control. And then the stress goes away. So it puts you back into control. That's really his whole focus.
Yeah. Such a great insight. Okay, so there's so many, I feel like with this conversation, it's very rich and there's a lot of different tangents that we could perhaps go off on. But tell us, Morley, because we've piqued the folks who are watching along, either live or listening back a little later, I suspect we've piqued some curiosity because there's quite a bit of conversation happening. And that self-reflection is going to do that. What are we going to be talking about in that webinar tomorrow? What kind of things within the stress connection are you going to speak to? What can the folks at home expect, whether they are able to register and attend live, or if they're able to, catch up on the recording or the replay for whatever reason the timing perhaps doesn't work? What can they expect to learn about? How are we going to deepen the conversation?
Well, we're really going to make the connection between stress and energy loss. And when you've got energy loss, then you are more susceptible to metabolic imbalance and pathogenic invasion. And that's really what it's about, is getting people to realize that the stress of their world is going to be a window into, are they healthy or not? And how they respond to that stress is very, very important. And there are communication highways. There's something called the vagus nerve. It's an amazing. It's called the wanderer, but it's an amazing mechanism of, most of the nerves we have in our body go south. They go from the brain down to the body. Well, the vagus nerve is coming up from the organs to the brain, saying, "We got a problem." and so 80% of its activity is from south to north, trying to advise the brain. But it isn't this part of the brain. It's the reptilian brain, and telling the reptilian brain, we got a problem. And we got inflammation, and we've got energy issues that we've got to deal with. And the body is being very revealing about what's going on. And the brainstem is saying, we got to correct that. And there's a particular area of the brain that responds and sends out a signal. And that's really what we're going to focus on, is how do we respond to that stress from a physiological standpoint. And this is all written up in the literature. It's very clearly written up, but no one talks about it. No one tells people how to deal with it. You can go to every website you can think of, American Heart Association, American Diabetes, cancer, whatever. They'll all say that this condition starts with stress, but then they'll never tell people, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
They'll just say, they'll have this amorphous, oh, stress is bad. Well, yeah, but stress is part of life. We're all going to be facing stress. It's what are we going to do about it? And how do we begin to take control of it? That's what's really important. That's really what we're going to focus on tomorrow.
Really great. Thank you, Morley.
Uh-huh.
Oh, so good. So good. There are quite a lot of conversations, as I said, that are happening live. So I've scrolled up quite a way. We've got something from Delane, and it's quite lengthy. I've asked Christiane to summarize it for me so that we can present it to you, because otherwise I might be reading for a little bit too long. But thank you, Delane, for popping this question in. So Christiane summarized it to say that Delane is new to the RCP and is looking to manage high blood pressure, which has lingered after preeclampsia with past pregnancies. The question is, do you think I can recover from this stress and normalize my blood pressure using the protocol?
Emphatically, yes. But it's going to require some work. And it really requires that you believe in your body's natural ability to correct itself. And hypertension is very pervasive in society, as you know. But really, where hypertension originates is the microcirculation of the body, especially in the kidneys. And that's where little arterioles, the little tiny arteries, meet up with the little tiny veins called venules. Well, where they meet, that's really important, the handoff that takes place there. And that's the domain of copper. Copper manages microcirculation. So classic issues around hypertension are people are using magnesium deficient, they're usually potassium deficient, and they are copper deficient. And they all have overlapping spheres of influence, but it's also probably going to require some emotional freedom technique to overcome the fear and the trauma of those pregnancies and the deliveries. Sounds like they were significant, especially if you had preeclampsia. And unfortunately, what the conventional obstetrical community does is wait for the crisis to occur. Oh, you've got preeclampsia, and then administer magnesium in an IV to calm you down. And that's probably what happened in your deliveries. And did they ever measure your magnesium throughout the pregnancy? No. Did they ever measure your copper status? No. Did they measure your ceruloplasmin status? No. Did they measure your retinol status? No. And those are 4 critical nutrients that are completely ignored by conventional birthing practitioners. Why? I don't know. I've got some theories. But unfortunately, they're more worried about iron and vitamin D. And I was just talking with a nurse practitioner today, and she had just given birth recently and was having some postpartum issues. And I said, what do you know about iron and vitamin D in breast milk? She said, what's not supposed to be there? I said, okay, good. You know that. That's great. She said, well, that's what I was taught. But she says, but we always advise our clients to take vitamin D. I'm like, why would you override Mother Nature? So we'll talk about that in a separate conversation. But to your point about your hypertension, there's some very specific reasons why it happened. And it's because oxygen wasn't being managed efficiently in your body because of the pregnancy. And it would take a couple hours to really get into the weeds of it, but know that we do know why, and we can talk about why. It's just, we don't have a chance in these little vignette meetings that we have. We can go into much deeper dives in some of the other meetings that we do have. So to address your question, absolutely, this can be addressed. Got many people who've corrected their hypertension with just magnesium alone before they have to get to the potassium, before they even get to the copper. So just know that there is relief, there's layers of relief, and we would be happy to support you in that effort.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Morley, and thank you for sharing that question and context with us, Delane. So we're going to jump into two more things. One, and we need a very short and sweet answer to this one, Morley. Just going to give you the heads up there. Daniel has asked, what is the view on a regular yoga practice?
Okay.
So that's a short and sharp one.
Okay. Yoga is a beautiful discipline of stress management, but it doesn't deal with the mineral foundation that's behind the stress response. That would be my response to that. Yoga is beautiful, absolutely amazing, but there are biological factors that have to be addressed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And there are some responses in there as well. And Christiane has acknowledged that as well with her yoga practice a couple of times a week.
And the breath work is amazing in yoga. It's very, very important to our physiology, as you well know.
Yeah, absolutely. And Darren asked a question about caffeine. Christiane has addressed that one in the comments here. So we'll move on to the next one. And this is the last question that we'll address. This is from Ishimaru. Forgive me if I've mispronounced your name. With increased stress, is it necessary to increase recommended RCP dosages or just stay the course?
I think the way you've asked the question, you've already answered it. I think your instinct tells you need to up the dosing, and I think that's a good move. At the end of the day, we've got to be able to metabolize our stress. If the stress rises, that means the oxidative stress is rising. That means the pressure to undermine the ability to make energy gets threatened, and we've got to respond. So yeah, I think your instincts are spot on. You need to up your dosing as you go through the storm. That's very, very good to do.
Okay, now there is some other things that perhaps we could possibly address, but we have run out of time to answer those. However, it's not the only opportunity you have to have your answers given to you, shared with you, that those questions that you guys have about the stress connection and about the RCP, there are places to have those answered. We have a small window of time when we do these lives, and my great hope is that as we continue, that you guys can ask us questions pertinent to the topic that we're talking about to kind of keep us streamlined. But I do understand that there are questions outside of those topics because you just want answers for your specific circumstances and situations, right? So if that is the case and you do have a question and you want it answered by Morley, the best way to do that, I should say, is by joining the premium community. It's $9.97 USD a month. There's a 30-day money back guarantee. So there's really, really low risk. Come in, give it a go, join the live Q&As. There's 2 a month, lots and lots of info. You get access to all of the replays, the recording, you get access to the online forum. Like for the small investment that it is, there is an abundance of information available. So, excuse me, if you have questions and you want them answered, I do encourage you to come and join the premium community. The link is in the description of this video if you need it. If you've got any questions, pop them into the comments and we can circle back to those. But have a look at that link because it gives you some details, what you get, what's included and all of that sort of stuff. And you get access to Morley, this guy, who wouldn't want access to him for less than $10 a month? I don't know. Yeah, really? It seems like a no-brainer. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So if you haven't already registered for the free webinar tomorrow, the link for that is also in the description of this video. Please do register, even if you can't make it at that time. We can never, ever find a time that works for everybody. We are a truly global audience, but do register because we'll email you out the replay within 48 hours and you can sit and watch that at your convenience, catch up on whatever it is that you missed. And of course, if you've got questions from that, there is always a Q&A coming up that you can ask those questions. I think the stress connection is going to be a really good one, Morley. I don't know about you, but I think there's a lot, certainly in the times that we're in at the moment, there is a lot of elevated stress.
There's method to our madness. We know that stress is a big issue, and we just need to regularly address it so people have the right context about what's happening in their body.
Yeah, absolutely. And if that is, the digital commitment isn't quite right for you, then you can always buy Morley's book, right? Tell us a little bit about the book, Morley.
The book came out October last year. It's doing well. It's got traction. And I think it's helping give people a real context for what's going on, what our real philosophy is, what happened, how do we get into this situation?
Yeah.
And the front half is explaining the problem, the back half is giving the solution. And it's a great resource. So we have that in physical and ebook, and probably by the end of the month, we'll have the audio version available. And I think people will really enjoy hearing me narrate it. I don't know why people like my voice, but they seem to. It's always been a lifelong challenge for me. But no, I think people just will find it to be an added resource to their library to understand all this.
Yeah. And do you mention the stress connection in the book?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's chapter 5, I believe. Yeah. It's all about stress. Yeah. It's definitely there.
Yeah.
And writing the book was stressful. Yes. Yes, it was. This gone, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Michelle, my apologies, has said the book is the best health information this decade.
Wow. Well, have you written a review, Michelle? I hope you have. That'd be a good one.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Excellent. All right, folks. So the incredible mind that is Morley, like there's so many ways I could describe you, but thank you for being here. And thank you for those of you who have really engaged today. If you're catching up on the replay, I do hope you've enjoyed the conversation today. We'll be back again having more conversations about this. We've got the free webinar coming up tomorrow. You can always buy a copy of Morley's book if you like to sink your teeth and you really enjoy that tactile experience. There is also the ebook as well for those of you who prefer to have a digital reader that you can take with you, as you go about your day. And we'll be back again soon. So thank you so much, Morley. If you've got any questions, head to the premium community, get those questions answered. And we look forward to seeing you guys again live here in the future.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. And Shanae, as always, thank you for all your help. And Kristan, I know you're hiding back there. Thank you. And we'll catch up tomorrow. That sounds great.
Yeah. And one of the things that I do need to do is when I hit close live, there is a bit of a delay between the conversation that you and I are having, Morley, and the live stream. But the moment I close it off, it cuts us off. So we're just going to pause for a moment and then I will end the live. Don't say anything that you want anybody to hear because we absolutely need to cut it at an appropriate time. So we're going to say goodbye. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Take care and we'll see you soon.